we thought it would be helpful just to talk about 5 mindsets that we try to cultivate.
Right.
When God picked this child to be in your family, He picked you to be their mom or you to be their dad.
And I think that's so important to look at your child as an image bearer of God.
When you believe in the gospel, it does radically change everything about all your relationships, parenting included. You're listening to We Can Talk About This. I'm Christa Threlfall.
And I'm Jonathan Threlfall. And today we're talking about parenting.
Yes,
specifically. Very important topic to us.
Specifically, not just parenting and what to do, but mindsets that every Christian parent should have.
Right. Yeah. How to approach parenting, what to be thinking about with regard to parenting. And I do want to ask you, Christa, when did you start thinking about parenting?
I've been starting to think about parenting even when I was a kid. That wasn't good grammar, but I'm just going to go with it. I've been starting to think about it.
It's all right. I didn't even think about that as good, that it wasn't good grammar. I heard what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But as the youngest of 4 kids, I got to watch my siblings start to become parents. I got to watch other people around me and how they parented, whether they were believers or unbelievers, just seeing how they did things, whether it worked.
Yeah.
Just seeing different ways of doing things. But then when I was pregnant with our first, I started reading books about parenting as well.
Yeah. And I think my thoughts about parenting probably began to be formed as a child. I just started thinking about my own parents, and probably more so in retrospect, like looking back and seeing how many of my convictions were probably formed just as I was a child, observing them.
Yeah, without you even realizing
Without
it.
even me realizing it. And then I do remember reading some chapters in books on how to be a godly husband, how to be a godly father, that approached parenting too.
How old were you when you read those?
6. Yeah, I started really early thinking about how to be a godly
Well
husband.
done.
No, it was probably when I was in college, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we were dating.
Yeah.
Definitely before we were married, but those things were on my mind. So, should we start with the first one?
No, we shouldn't.
Okay.
Because
all right, let's pause then.
in case you don't know us,
Yes.
just a little orientation. We have 4 kids.
Yes.
That does not make us experts.
No.
But it does make us in the trenches as parents too.
Right.
So currently our kids are ages 7 through 14. And when we wanted to talk about parenting, partly because we're parents, we thought it would be helpful. And then I had put out, a Q&A box on our Instagram. We can talk about this podcast. Make sure you follow us there if you want to give feedback about episode suggestions. And someone had mentioned parenting.
Yeah.
Parenting is a huge topic.
It is.
So we obviously aren't going to cover everything in 30 minutes. We couldn't cover everything if we did this for 30 hours.
No.
But we thought it would be helpful just to talk about 5 mindsets that we try to cultivate.
Right.
And these are all specifically for Christian parents.
Yeah. These mindsets, I think they emerge out of what the Bible requires of Christian parents, and specifically the goals that Christian parents should have for their children.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay. You want to name the first one?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And thinking about parenting, and what to do as a parent, the very first thing that came to my mind is that I, as a mom, we as parents have to be and want to be desperate for God. There are so many times with parenting, situations that'll come up that I am just thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do here. With interacting with a child, trying to help them with something, trying to teach them with something, and I am just at a loss. And I think that's how God designed it.
Yeah.
I think He wants us to stay desperate for Him and constantly in this, I don't know what to do. And so what do I have to do? I have to get on my knees and pray. And I need to ask God for His wisdom.
Yeah.
The passage that came to mind when I was thinking about this from Psalm 127, it says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. And it's later on in that psalm where it talks about that children are a gift, a heritage from the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I love thinking about that. Unless God is building it, I can do read all of the books, listen to all the podcasts, like try to do all the things, listen to all the parenting gurus that I want. But unless God is in it, all of that is for nothing.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. You know, it reminds me of Proverbs because Proverbs talk so much about the need for wisdom, and wisdom comes from the Lord. So
Yep.
I was thinking of Proverbs chapter 2 when it talks about it's actually a father speaking to his son. I think
Mm.
there's so much about
Mm-hmm.
parenting in the book of Proverbs. And you do get this idea that that the father is telling the son that he needs to be desperate for wisdom. He needs to search for it as if it were like hidden gold and hidden treasures. And instead of finding wisdom, he finds the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
And it is a respect for God in everything that has to drive our parenting too, and
Yeah.
keep us desperate. Because I think part of that is that there's not like a set of rules. Okay, in this situation, God says do this. In this situation, do this. There are an infinite number of situations that you could find yourself in as a parent that you do need to stay desperate. God, what would you have me to do? And just relying on the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, didn't plan to ask you this question, but can you tell me about some circumstances that you have found particularly you found yourself needing the Lord, especially in certain circumstances with parenting?
Oh, every day.
Mm,
I mean, we're going through things right now that that we've been praying about and praying with
hmm
our kids or individual kids and just saying, "Hey, Daddy and Mommy, God has told us that we need to train you
yeah,
in this. Um, and let's pray together for
yeah,
wisdom.
yeah,
Let's because
yes,
Daddy and Mommy need God's help to train you with this.
yeah,
And you need God's help to obey. And so like even just praying with my kids, being honest with them. Like
right,
you need God's help to obey. I need God's help to know how to teach you how to obey. And then when it goes beyond just like obedience and to the heart things, like a prayer that I constantly pray for our kids is that they would love the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength.
yeah,
Because I figure that that covers the bases. I don't know all the particulars of how God wants them to be as
yeah,
as adult humans.
yeah,
But I know that he wants them to have that.
hmm
And so I pray that for them. But yeah, I encounter these situations all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. I think one thing that comes to my mind is every stage of parenting when your kid reaches a new level of intelligence or maturity or independence, it's like leveling up into the new part of the adventure of
Yeah.
parenting, and you're faced with a new set of questions you never had to wrestle with
Mhm.
before at each stage of your child's development,
Yeah.
which then requires you to depend on the Lord in a new and fresh way.
Mhm.
And it's that's one thing that makes parenting exciting, but also the thing that as Christian parents demands us to be completely God dependent because we didn't get training. We didn't get trained for this, like this stage. We haven't been through this stage before.
Yeah.
We need God's help.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I think the thing that drives us to our knees, because Krista's talked a lot about prayer already, is the fact that we are flawed and sinful people. We recognize that we are in ourselves insufficient, and at the same time, what we're doing in parenting is a momentous task. Like we
Mhm.
are shaping these kids' lives. We are creating memories for them they will never forget. Like they're
Yeah.
going to draw on these formative years for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
And you think about your childhood and the kinds of trajectories that were set for you, and just because of a little comment that's an adult made to you like years ago that they didn't even realize that they were making. Well, we cannot overestimate how important what we're doing, and therefore how much we must lean upon the Lord. So yes, staying desperate for God, an
Mhm.
important mindset of parenting.
Yes. The second one, this one, I feel so passionate about
Mm,
this one because you think about let's say you have kids, okay? Maybe you don't yet have kids, but let's assume you do. Think about your child. Think about you. You are the parent for the job.
mhm,
If you're a mom, you are the mom for this child. When God picked this child to be in your family, he picked you to be their mom or you to be their dad. And that's so important
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
because I think sometimes we can fall into this trap of thinking someone else would do it better.
Right.
And you know what? there are a lot of better moms and dads out there than us. That's true. We are not perfect parents. But we are our four kids' parents,
Mm,
and we are the parents that God chose them to have. So that doesn't mean that there aren't areas that we should and want to improve on,
mm,
but we are the parents that God has chosen for our kids,
yeah.
and you are the parent that God has chosen for your
Yeah,
kids.
that's good. I think the way I like to put this is that you are the primary discipler of your kid as
Mhm.
well. You're the one that God has called to cultivate in them a love for God, to discipline them, to teach them. All those things are things God has called you to do. And I think also related to that, we should resist the tendency to try to delegate that to other people just because, like what Krista said, you might think they could do a better job. I remember even as a youth pastor, when I was a youth pastor, people would their kids would get into the youth group and they would tell me, "Well, he's all yours now," like as if they were sort of handing over the responsibility to me as a youth pastor. And my impulse, even before we didn't have teenage kids at the time, was to really try to correct that and say, no, this kid is, you are the primary discipler in this child's life.
Mhm.
And I think that's incredibly important to keep in mind.
Having said that, that doesn't mean that you have to do it all.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you can't ask for help or shouldn't ask for help. Like we it takes a village.
Yeah.
I love that statement. It is so
Yeah.
true. We have so many people who pour into our kids' lives,
Yeah.
and we need them.
Yes.
So this saying that you're the parent for the job, it's not saying like you're the perfect parent or you're the only one who can speak into their lives. No, we need other people
Right.
in our lives, in our kids' lives, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But just that God has made you the primary discipler, and you're when it comes down to it, you are their parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
It so that
Yeah.
rests on you.
Yeah, that does highlight the importance of the church too.
It
I
does.
think because the church is the community of followers of Jesus, and we follow Jesus in community, and we help other people's children follow Jesus as well. And it's so I like what you qualified. I like the qualification you made there. That just because we're saying that you are the parent, you're the one that God has called to be the parent of this child, doesn't mean that you have exclusive rights to have any influence on that child. In God's goodness, He puts Christians into a community of believers, but as a parent, that falls on your shoulders too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
because it's the parent who decides to make sure that they're being consistent in the church fellowship, so that the kid has an opportunity to make friends with older people, younger people, people their age,
Mhm.
and that can influence them toward Christ likeness.
Yeah, yeah. I we didn't have this written down, but something just came to mind with this too. I think it can be easy to think like you have maybe a tight rein
Hmm.
on your kids, and to feel like they have to come to you with everything,
Hmm.
and if they go to someone else besides you,
You
that
feel betrayed or something.
yeah, yeah, and especially as our kids are getting
Mm.
older, we have, our oldest is 14 right
Yeah,
now. Um, I of course I want our kids to feel comfortable to come to us with everything and anything. But there are other people that they have in their lives
yeah,
too, and I want to have like more of an open hand
mm,
with that to encourage
yeah,
them to go and talk with other people who
yeah.
are also godly and wanting to lead them in the right way.
I would say especially when you trust the influence
Yeah.
that someone's having on them.
Yeah.
If you see another godly person
Yeah.
that you're like, I would love for my kid to learn from that person. I would love for them to be around that person. Then that's God's gift to you.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
very important. Okay. This third one is you can do it with joy. So what do you mean by this, Krista?
Yeah, because I'm the one who wrote it
Because you're
down.
the one that wrote it down.
I'm the one. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes it's easy to get into this mindset of parenting as drudgery.
Hmm.
We've done it.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's like, oh, like, just yesterday something happened. I was like, oh, like, seriously.
Right.
Um, I don't want that to be the norm
Hmm.
for me. So I'm preaching to myself with this as well, but
Mm,
that all the fruit of the spirit should apply to my parenting
yeah.
as well. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness,
Mm,
faithfulness, meekness, temperance. All of those things should apply to who I am as a parent.
yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, joy and patience gets excluded as
Right.
soon as we're talking about motherhood or fatherhood.
Yeah.
Um, the Yeah, so
Yeah.
just parenting with a spirit of joy,
Yeah.
not of drudgery. And
Yeah.
those are things like how can you do that except the spirit enables you? That's
Yeah.
it goes back to number one, being
Yeah.
desperate for God. Like there's no way I can do that
Yeah.
unless God is the one doing it in
Yeah.
me.
And there's no question that parenting comes with its unique and sometimes heartbreaking challenges.
Yeah.
And there are children who break parents' hearts, and it is devastating. And there are parents with children in their young years that it's easy to get into a trap of thinking that this is the worst thing ever in life. And this becomes the topic of complaint with your friends. And can you believe that my kid did this or that? And there's some, I think, benefit in camaraderie and when it comes to parenting and other people can understand the burdens. But if this is something that God has called you to do, then it's something we can do with joy. And I think it's probably a danger to reinforce that spirit of drudgery by pooling it with other people's drudgery too.
Mhm.
Um, this is an amazing privilege that we have. And I love that. I think it's so important that this is something that we could do with joy.
Mhm. Yeah. God has made us to be co-laborers
Yeah,
with him. And if you're a parent, that's one way that you get to be a co-laborer with God. It's not just you.
hmm,
It's not just God. It's both of you together.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
working to try to influence this child, and God is fathering you at the same time.
That's right. Yeah, that's good. Can we move on to the next one? Okay. This one is this fourth mindset is that you parent from the fullness of who you are. I think that's so important because every interaction you have with your kid as a parent is a snapshot of where you are at the moment,
Mhm.
spiritually speaking. And you are you're not being obedient in your own personal life. You're being impatient. You're stressed. Well, that is inevitably going to be an overflow of your interaction with your children. On the other hand, if the Lord is working in your heart to renew you, to transform you, and those fruit of the Spirit that Christa listed just a little while ago are at work in your life, well, that will come out too. Parenting is not something you can fake. You can't fake it.
Mhm.
It is just part of you. And I've seen this in myself so often. I'll realize that I'm stressed out or my mind is on other things and I'm juggling a lot of different things and then one of the kids will say something and I'll react in a way that's harsh or just unloving and that's an overflow of who I am. So you have to be as a parent constantly nurturing yourself, nourishing yourself in God's word. I think that's absolutely key when it
Mhm.
comes to parenting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not like something that you strive for. Like it's not like, okay, strive to parent out of the fullness of who you are. N- It just happens.
Yeah,
That's that's what you do.
yeah,
And so when I am doing it with drudgery and not relying on God's strength, I'm just trying to just spew out whatever comes to mind as I respond to my kids. Um, they pick up on that.
mhm, yeah,
And
yeah,
they are good little disciplers.
yeah,
I God has definitely used parenting as one of the major tools of sanctification in my life because everything that I do is being watched
yeah,
and examined, and in some cases imitated,
yeah,
even if they don't try to.
right, yeah, very
Um,
true.
and so, yeah, we're always parenting out of who we are. So we were talking about this last night that there's there's something. It seems like it's worse for a child to hear the truth and then see the opposite of that lived out, than for the child not to hear the truth. So
Mm.
so if they see it lived out in a hypocritical way, they see mom and dad, they go to church on Sunday, and they hear the preacher, preaching on trusting a God, or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And then all week they're seeing dad and mom live the opposite of
yeah,
that.
yeah. That,
Okay, what does that do
yeah,
to the child's understanding of faith
right,
and who God is, and how we live this out?
right. Yeah. They might be thinking, yeah, I hear what my dad says, and I see that he goes to church, but it's not doing anything for him.
Yeah.
And they may not be able to articulate it like that, but that is just being impressed upon them week after week.
Hmm.
And that's incredibly damaging, right?
Yeah.
It undermines the credibility of Christ himself.
Hmm.
Because if someone who claims to be following Christ in the most intimate, important realm of life, and that is the home, is contradicting that by their lifestyle, man, that is a big turnoff to a child, even from a very, very young age.
Yeah.
And it's very sobering to think about that. It is true though, and the kids will be so honest about their perception of how you're coming across, and in a way that you may not even realize. I remember the kid saying, "Dad, I didn't want you to get mad at me for doing this." It's like, mad at you? Well, I'm never mad at you. Well, apparently, apparently that's not the case, because that's not how they perceived it.
Yeah.
And so you can't fake it. You are always parenting out of the overflow of who you are.
Hmm. Yeah. And this is something that, when you believe in the gospel, it does radically change everything about all your relationships,
Yeah.
parenting included. Because believing that Jesus has come to save me, like I'm a sinner, but Jesus came to save me and to free me from
Mm.
sin. So that frees me, that when I do sin, um, as a parent or in any other realm, that I can confess that. I can confess that
To your kids.
to my
To your
kids, or
kids.
to anybody else,
Yeah.
because I don't have to pretend like I'm the perfect mom to my kids.
Yeah.
I'm not. They know that. I know that. Every thinking person knows that.
And it does more damage when you try to pretend that
It
before your
does.
kids.
It does.
Yeah.
And so believing the gospel, that Jesus has come to free me from my sin, to give me forgiveness, from that then frees me, when I do sin,
Mm.
to say, "Honey, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for being impatient. I was harsh when I said that.
Mm.
Will you forgive me?
Yeah.
And mom needs Jesus too."
Yeah. That's good. That's good. They see the life of Jesus at work in you,
Yeah.
even as you're trying to work the life of Jesus into them through your parenting.
Yeah.
And that probably is a lot more powerful than if you were just to tell them everyone needs Jesus. But when they see you confessing that and me confessing that, then they realize that's real. We
Mhm.
do need Jesus. I need Jesus.
Yeah.
Um,
Even
yeah.
even in our parenting,
Hmm.
our Heavenly Father is parenting us.
Yeah.
So in all these things, we're like trying to be wise and trying to, point our children to Christ, and as we should. But in all of those, like, failing, fumbling, bumbling attempts, God, our Father, is perfectly parenting us
Yes.
and our children as they trust in Him
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. That's good. That's very good. Okay. Shall we move on to the fifth one?
Go ahead.
Okay. So this one is your child is an individual. Uh, and by that, I mean the uniqueness of your child, and parenting with that in mind, that your kid is just not like a cookie cutter child, but has his or her own unique weaknesses and strengths, and abilities and temptations and needs. Some kids might need to be listened to more. Or some kids may, I've seen this with my boys right now in their development. They need some physical challenge. They like to wrestle, or like they like to play, like, arm wrestle, and that's good for them, and it creates a bond. And just knowing that opens up connections with them, that almost just like shifts the mindset
Mhm.
with them, that
Yeah.
opens up just fun times and my ability to connect with them. And I think that's so important, to look at your child as an image bearer of God.
Mhm.
Here is someone that God loves, that that is interesting.
Yeah.
That's just interesting in their own right. Um, I think that's important because, first of all, the Bible teaches it that we're all created in God's
Mm-hmm.
image, but it teaches you as a parent to value what you see developing in them and to
Mm-hmm.
try to cultivate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something in that about enjoying your child
Yeah, yeah,
too. Like they are fascinating and just the way that they're growing and developing and
yeah,
you can learn from them.
right,
Like there are
yeah,
times we'll have our, put our kids to bed
mhm,
or say goodnight to them and afterwards we like talking about they did this and that was just amazing or
right,
and sometimes like we'll even tell our children that like
yeah,
sweetie, when you did this, that was so impressive. Like that
yeah,
took so much courage.
yeah,
And I want to be courageous like that.
yeah,
Like I've told
yeah,
my kids that. And like that is just those are just life-giving
yeah,
words.
yeah,
So in enjoying them as people, discipling them as individuals
yeah,
as well. And that again goes back to our need for God and for his wisdom.
yeah,
And one verse that I come back to in my parenting as in all of life is James 1:5.
mm,
If any of you lack wisdom, let him scour the internet, right? Like then put up a poll on social media and see what other people would do.
mm,
Search the hashtag for parenting or grace-based parenting or Christian
yeah,
parenting. No, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God,
yes, yeah,
who gives generously.
yeah,
And that is what everything in life comes down to.
mm,
Parenting, marriage, finances, anything.
yeah,
It's okay, wisdom department, I'm out. God, I need you
mhm,
to give me whatever you want me to know for
yeah,
this.
yeah,
And so in treating our children as individuals, um, just understanding that we need God's help with this.
yeah, yeah. And I think we've gotten to the place with our where our kids are in their age that I, and I'm sure you too, have learned to admire them. Like I think you're just saying a little before, like there's things that are impressive. They're like, wow, I think I want to be a little more like that.
Yeah.
There's some things that they've been doing and striving toward that I think as an adult, it's easy for me to get complacent about and not be
Mhm.
courageous enough to do that. And
Yeah.
they are doing that. It's actually good for them to know that we admire them and for us to tell them that instead of just viewing ourselves like, I'm the parent, so I'm always, X numbers of steps ahead of you.
Mm,
Well, I might not be.
yeah.
And especially as I realized God's created you in his own image and you have your unique worth. And so we can all learn from each other. That doesn't blur the parent-child distinction. That
Yeah.
just elevates the image of God reality
Mhm.
in our child. It helps then inform our parenting as well.
Yeah. A few episodes back, we talked about interacting with people you disagree with.
Yeah.
I think some of that can come into play
Yes.
as well,
Yeah.
especially as our children get older.
Yeah.
But just still engaging them in conversation. Hey,
Yeah.
what do you think about this?
Yeah, yeah. One way that I have tried to put this into practice as far as honoring the individuality of our kids is by praying with them personally
Mm,
and personalizing my prayer so that it becomes a blessing to them individually. And as I pray with them, this is before they go to bed, as I pray with them, I'll think through what about them makes them unique. Different from the other kids, because I know that, I'm in the boys' room and the other will hear my prayer for the other, but I'm praying for them and thanking God for specific things that they've done. Um, one of our kids and I have been playing chess quite a bit, and he's beat me the past 3 times in chess. And so in my prayer, I said, Lord, thank you that we've been able to play chess, even though I've lost 3 times, and please help me to do better. And just that we've been able to pray through that and just talk to God about
yeah.
things specific to what that child has been doing and the strengths and unique gifts that God has given to that child.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say with this mindset?
I don't think so.
All
No.
right. What's your favorite thing about being a dad?
Oh man. I think just seeing our kids grow and develop. I
Mhm.
think just what I said
Mhm.
just now, just being able to see their uniqueness blossom
Yeah.
and enjoy it.
Mhm.
Um, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
And what do you love most about being a mom?
There are a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I'm since you already mentioned one about seeing God's grace and seeing them develop and God's grace at work in them. I love giving them good food.
You do a great job with that too. You do a fantastic. We should do an episode about that. She
I
is an incredible cook,
well,
an
here's the
incredible
thing.
dietitian. I'm not going to let you say anything else. I'm going to talk about your cooking abilities for the rest of this episode.
Well, no, all I wanted to say was that like even just in this simple thing that happens many times a day, I love seeing their eyes light up or
Yeah,
like when I make something out of the ordinary, like, "Oh, thank you, mom." Like
yeah.
it is such a little thing, but it just thrills my
You
heart.
do it.
I
You do an
love it.
incredible job.
Oh,
I just hats off. I mean, if I had a hat right now, I'd take it off
thank you.
about your cooking ability. And it does delight the kids. They
It
enjoy it.
does. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are 5 mindsets that we strive to have by God's grace and that we think are important for any Christian parent. And maybe sometime down the line, we'll talk more about, like, I don't know, some of the nitty
The
gritties.
nitty-gritties and some things that you could do to ruin your parenting.
Yeah.
Just like we did an episode on how to ruin your marriage. But
Yeah.
maybe that's down the road sometime. But for now, thank you so much for joining us.
Check out wecantalkaboutthispodcast.com for more resources of different books that we've read on parenting that have helped us.
See you next time.